are brutal, inhumane killers who target the innocent. Why on earth could anyone with any sense of humanity kidnap young infants, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old? This has to outrage everybody. This isn't about Israel and the Palestinians. This is about humanity against people who are so barbaric in their behavior that they are, as President Biden said, they are sheer evil.
Is there a way, Mark, given as you say, that this is not about Israel and the Palestinians? Obviously, many around the world do see it as about Israel and the Palestinians. But if it is not about that, if it is specifically about Israel and Hamas and the people who perpetuated this barbaric, horrible crime, is there a way for you to defeat them without putting thousands and thousands of IDF troops in Gaza?
So we might have to. And my own daughter is being called up for national service. She's a reserve officer in the IDF. She actually raced back. She was on holiday in Europe and raced back to volunteer. And her call-up notice came as she returned. And she's like tens of thousands or more of young Israelis who understand the threat we're facing. They've seen the barbarity of our opponent. They will risk their lives to protect our country.
Mark, we have met so many of them, and it is incredible their bravery. Many who had finished their reserve service still coming back in. But when you say we might have to, is it still your hope? Is it still the goal of what seems to be heated negotiations now and over the next few days, that you could avoid such a ground incursion?
I cannot, and I apologize, but I cannot go into the Israeli military strategy ahead of time. And we will surprise Hamas in what we do. But I can tell you our goal is clear, and there's going to be no wavering on this whatsoever. We will destroy Hamas the way ISIS was destroyed in Syria and Iraq. We will crush their military machine, we will dismantle it, and we will take apart their political structure. We didn't want this war, we didn't start this war. It was forced upon us. But we will finish this war with a new reality in Gaza, a reality where Gaza will no longer be this enclave run by a brutal terrorist organization.
So, Mark, you talk about the humanitarian fears, and we have a producer, Ibrahim, who lives in Gaza, and he's got a 7 and 11-year-old child. They have been trying to make their way south, right? Their children looking out, bombs coming down, the sounds and the horror and the fear. Civilians are dying. Are you committed? Are you able to commit to there being real humanitarian relief coming in from Gaza? And I separate that even from opening a border in a way that would allow people out, because I understand that's a complex issue, related but separate. Are you able to commit to aid coming in?
100%, and we want that to happen. But I want to tell you two things that happened just while Americans were asleep over the night. One, yesterday, as CNN reported, there were truckloads, tankers of petrol that were sent in for humanitarian reasons to help, so there'd be fuel for the generators in Gaza's hospitals. We know for a fact, and it was actually reported, that some of that fuel was stolen by Hamas for their war machine. They are the people with guns. They are the people who have the power inside Gaza, and they have no qualms whatsoever about stealing materials that are meant for the innocent civilian population of Gaza and siphoning it off for their war machine. And that's what happened yesterday. So I think what we need to establish a mechanism so there'll be safeguards, again, that sort of thing. There's no point the international community coming to support the people of Gaza if it's going to just be siphoned off and taken away by Hamas. The second point you have to know is that we had agreed and arrangements were made for the exit yesterday of dual nationals, people with foreign passports. It was all agreed that they can leave, and at the very last moment, Hamas blocked the Rafah border crossing, as if to say, we are holding these foreign nationals as hostages, just as they're holding the 200 Israelis, just as they're holding the civilian population of Gaza as a human shield. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised by Hamas's behavior, whether it's with the dual nationals or with the oil. That's who they are, and that's the brutal enemy we're up against.
Mark Regev, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. A senior advisor and confidant to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here in Israel. Poppy and Phil, back to you.
Well, thanks, Aaron. A Supreme Court justice weighing in on the ethics questions hanging over the High Court. We're going to tell you what Amy Coney Barrett had to say.
Also, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan facing a deadline with his potential speakership on the line. He may not have the votes he needs. What does that mean for the upcoming House floor showdown today? Stay with us.
Custom Ink helps us motivate our students with custom gear. We love how Custom Ink takes care of everything we need so we can focus on the kids.
Custom Ink has hundreds of products to help you feel connected. Upload your logo or start your design today at customink.com.
I got the captain for 3 days. That'd be sweet. What? I'm 12 hours short.
Have a fun weekend.
Was that necessary?
No, neither is a blown weekend. With Paycom, employees do their own payroll, so you can fix problems before they become problems. Woo. Get Paycom and make the unnecessary unnecessary. See you down the line.
New projects means new project managers. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job, you immediately get your short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job criteria. Visit Indeed.com/hire and get started today.
From summer loves to fall flames. So many ways to save. Life ready, wallet happy. That's 365 by Whole Foods Market.
Sleep more deeply and wake up rejuvenated. Purple Mattress's exclusive Gel Flex Grid draws the wave heat, relieves pressure, and instantly adapts. Sleep better, live purple. Visit purple.com or a mattress store near you.
Every detail counts. That's why I live my life with Lexi B2 hearing aids powered by Bose. When I began experiencing hearing loss, I knew I needed the best of the best. Lexi B2 hearing aids powered by Bose are app-controlled and self-fitting, which means I can tune and customize them to my needs and preferences on the Lexi app and enjoy high-quality hearing. Take the lead and call or order online at lexihearing.com to receive your Lexi B2 hearing aids powered by Bose today.
I met with Jim for about a half hour tonight. I'll have another meeting with him tomorrow, but I told Jim tonight that I'm a no, and look forward to our meeting tomorrow and answer some more questions. That was Republican Congressman Ken Buck telling CNN last night he is currently a no on Jim Jordan. That could change his mind as the House votes today on Jordan's bid to be the next speaker. Could he? Well, of course, we'll have to see. Jordan has gained the support of several key Republicans over the course of the last 36 hours, but as of now, according to our stellar Capitol Hill team and its whip count, still short of the 217 votes necessary to win the gavel. He can only afford to lose 4 members of his conference. Joining us now, CNN senior political analyst and anchor John Avalon and Josh Barrow, who puts out the Very Serious newsletter and podcast. All right, Josh Barrow, I was surprised watching some of the flips toward the Jordan column yesterday. There was kind of an alliance of appropriations guys, defense guys who seem to be hard-nosed and all of a sudden started moving in that direction. Do you think he gets over the finish line?
I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't think we're going to see the scenario that some people were thinking about where you might have as many as 50 people voting against him on the floor. If he doesn't have 218, I think he will be fairly close. But the problem is, Kevin McCarthy was fairly close in January. It still took him 15 votes to get all the way there. I think, you have these folks who are on the Appropriations Committee involved in national defense policy in the House. They had specific asks, and who knows exactly what Jim Jordan is saying to them behind closed doors. But it makes sense that it's possible to get them over the hump because they have concerns about funding the government, about spending levels on defense, and he can make promises about that, and he can conceivably even deliver on those promises. He might be more easily able to deliver on them than someone like Kevin McCarthy or Steve Scalise, because he's going to have more of a leash from the Freedom Caucus guys. He's already out there saying he intends to do another continuing resolution. But then you still have these sundry people who have other concerns. Ken Buck is a very idiosyncratic member there from Colorado, very conservative, quite upset apparently about Jim Jordan and also Steve Scalise refusing to say that Donald Trump had lost the 2020 election.
Right.
You have these 2 members from Florida who come from the Miami area in Florida, plus some others farther upstate. They have a particular political culture down there, might be a little bit more insulated from some of the national pressure that Jim Jordan can bring as a conservative. And so, even if he's 11 votes short, 15 votes short on the floor, that's still short. It could go many votes.
John, you have said that the idea that Jim Jordan could be the next speaker, could get to 217, is, in your words, should be absurd.
Yeah.
But is it more, if he gets there, is it more the moment than the man? This is a moment of global crisis, and the House still has no speaker.
It should not be, because ultimately the man is the person who is going to lead this conference, this Congress. And the idea that Jim Jordan can somehow unify the Republican conference and lead Congress is a sick joke. I want to be really clear about that. This is somebody who was directly implicated in the plot to overturn the election that led to an attack on the Capitol. Liz Cheney said that he knew more than any other member of Congress, was working with members of the Trump administration to overturn the election, which led to the attack. Remember, on the day of the attack, she said, "You did this." This is someone who has one of the lowest legislative records of anyone in Congress in terms of passing legislation, let alone working across the aisle. Someone who was described by former Republican Speaker John Boehner as a legislative terrorist, because he's focused on destroying and taking things down rather than building things up. So the idea that he's moderating and willing to make deals and open to concessions is a sick joke. And if Republicans make this decision today because of fears that they look weak because they're divided, rather than any of the other members they could have put up, they'll reap the whirlwind, especially those 18 Republicans from districts Biden won.
I will at least confirm that I don't know that any of the 220 Republicans currently in the House figured Jim Jordan was going to be their speaker at any point this year, and yet here we are. I do want to talk about, though, he's a very close ally to the former president. The former president who is now latching on to the global crisis that Poppy referred to, with sentiments like this. Take a listen.
We aren't bringing in anyone from Gaza, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, or Libya, or anywhere else that threatens our security. If you empathize with radical Islamic terrorists and extremists, you're disqualified. You're just disqualified. If you want to abolish the state of Israel, you're disqualified.
It was part of the kind of reproposing of the travel ban, which went so well for them in the opening days of their administration in 2017, and yet politically became this cudgel hot-button issue that his supporters glommed onto back then. It's disgusting politics, and yet it is, in Trump's view, effective politics.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's likely that we are going to take a substantial number of refugees related to this situation in
But that's
Israel.
part of the reason why, like the idea of I'm going to implement a new travel ban, I'm going to do it, like, there's no, what, like, it's purely a talking point. Not tied to any policy or any type of reality.
Right, it's purely a talking point, but I mean, I don't think that when we get into the presidential campaign, if that is a key issue in the presidential campaign, that's going to be because of Donald Trump. It's not going to be because of Jim Jordan or anything that's happening in the House of Representatives.
Right, but you've seen multiple Republican candidates now jump on this issue over the course of the last week or two. Clearly, they think something's there.
Yeah, no, I think they do, and I think that I think that you see also that in politics of Europe and all around the world. I think that there is a backlash related to migration and the situation at the border with the substantial number of people coming to the U.S. and making asylum claims. I think that the extent to which the former president made hay about that in 2016, he's probably on stronger political ground to do it now.
Look, obviously the politics of immigration, people rightfully say that we want to have borders that are secure, but this is about anti-Muslim fears, stoking those fires.
Which, to Phil's point, the Supreme Court knocked it down twice, the first attempt and the second attempt at the travel ban, because of your point.
This is blatant-based politics.
Only the third time that a small sliver of it was upheld.
That's right, but look, I mean, this isn't about policy, this isn't about the Supreme Court, it's about play to the base politics. Well, pure and simple.
All right, Josh Barrow, John Adler, thanks guys, appreciate it. Thank you. Well, this morning, the Supreme Court allowing the Biden administration to continue regulating what are called ghost guns, ordering 2 internet sellers of gun parts to comply with regulations. Now, ghost guns are homemade weapons made from kits people buy online who assemble their own firearms. These weapons are untraceable because the parts don't have serial numbers. Critics say they attract people who cannot own legal firearms. Last year, the federal government issued rules requiring anyone buying the kits to undergo background checks and also required any gun parts to carry serial numbers. The Supreme Court's temporary order now allows those regulations to remain in effect, while a legal challenge from firearm manufacturers plays out in lower courts. And Amy Coney Barrett is the latest Supreme Court justice to address ethics concerns, saying it would be a, quote, good idea for all 9 justices to adopt a formal code of conduct. Her comments came during an appearance at the University of Minnesota Law School.
there a code of conduct for Supreme Court justices, and what benefits do you see that would provide?
I think it would be a good idea for us to do it, particularly so that we can communicate to the public exactly what it is that we're doing in a clearer way than perhaps we have been able to do so far. There's unanimity among all nine justices that we should and do hold ourselves to the highest standards, highest ethical standards possible.
That's significant, though, because she's talking about specific guidelines being a good idea. Ethics in the High Court have come under close scrutiny after Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito failed to report lavish trips and gifts to other justices. Sonia Sotomayor and Neil Gorsuch did not recuse themselves from cases involving Penguin Random House Publishing, despite making money from book deals with the same company. CNN This Morning continues now.
President Biden is planning to make a historic wartime visit to Israel on Wednesday.
This is a big win for Israel, a real show of strength and solidarity.
It makes me proud to see our president standing up to terror.
Nobody wants war, but I think people are willing to accept war.
It's the most sadness that Gaza ever had.
A plan that will enable humanitarian aid to reach civilians in Gaza, and them alone.
Every day the numbers of the missing higher and higher and higher.
So many people are suffering similar loss, similar questions, similar unknowns.
I'm begging the world to bring my baby back home.
Israel will do all it can in order to release these prisoners.
We still don't know the condition of those hostages. The president has made very clear that that is a top priority.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Phil Matting with Poppy Harlow in New York. Aaron Burnett is live with us in Tel Aviv, Israel. It is 7 a.m. here on the East Coast, 2 p.m. in Tel Aviv, where President Biden will be heading for a high-stakes trip later this evening. He'll be going into an active war zone as Israel's war with Hamas intensifies and the humanitarian crisis escalates in Gaza. President Biden is going under growing pressure to get desperately needed food, water, and other aid into Gaza while also supporting Israel and trying to save American hostages currently held captive by Hamas.
He's coming here at a critical moment for Israel, for the region, and for the world. The president will hear from Israel how it will conduct its operations in a way that minimizes civilian casualties and enables humanitarian assistance to flow to civilians in Gaza. It is critical that aid begin flowing into Gaza as soon as possible.
Overnight, the Israeli military continued to bombard Gaza ahead of a possible ground invasion. The IDF says Biden's visit will not delay its planning for potential future operations in the Gaza Strip. Vital humanitarian aid has been piling up at the border crossing in the south in Egypt. That border crossing, the Rafah crossing, remains closed, and the World Health Organization is now warning that water is running out for hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians. Take a look at these satellite images. What you're looking at are 30-foot bomb craters blocking the roadway near that crossing. Let's go to our Aaron Burnett, who joins us live in Tel Aviv. Aaron, good morning to you. And the Israeli military said moments ago it is concerned about the humanitarian situation, but there is no ceasefire yet. And you also just had that, I think, very illuminating interview with advisor to Netanyahu, Mark Reged, who talked about the fact that we may have to go in on the ground.
Right, and Poppy, we all picked up on that. We may have to. I mean, a decision perhaps that cannot be undone has already been made, but at least the words out there are still, we may have to. They've also talked about the fact that they've killed more than 10 Hamas commanders in Gaza, and the bombardment continues. We've got plumes of smoke, thick plumes this morning. We've already heard thuds, less so than in prior days, but important to just always remember here that this war has now been going on for 10 days. Gaza has been completely bombarded. It's not as if we're awaiting for some invasion for this to start. It has already started. It's a matter of what it does next and what it escalates to. And President Biden's trip to Israel tomorrow is intended to both reaffirm U.S. solidarity with Israel, but also to serve as a message to Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah as this possibly does escalate. CNN's Arlette Saenz joins us from the White House. And Arlette, coming at a moment like this is incredibly high stakes because walking out with nothing is a very, very tough pill to swallow. So what is President Biden hoping to accomplish?
Well, Aaron, President Biden, as he's set to depart for Israel later today, is hoping that he can prevent this conflict in Israel from spreading into a wider crisis in the region. His trip was a dramatic show of solidarity for Israel, but it also will act as a sign of deterrence to those adversaries in the region, who the president has warned against trying to take advantage of this situation. But the president is heading to Israel, hoping to accomplish a few things. And one of the key challenges is addressing the humanitarian concerns as Israel continues its campaign to root out Hamas in Gaza. Now, while the president has stressed that Israel has the right to defend itself, you have also heard this steady uptick in warnings about the need to protect civilian life. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spent more than 7 hours meeting with Netanyahu and his war cabinet to talk about getting humanitarian aid into Gaza, and also the need to protect those civilians. Officials say that that is something the president is hoping to stress during parts of his visit. But additionally, on top of traveling to Israel, the president will also be making a critical trip to Amman, Jordan, where he will meet with Arab leaders, the president of Egypt, the King Abdullah of Jordan, as well as the leader of the Palestinian Authority. And it is there where the president is also expected to talk about this situation in Gaza. Each of those leaders has condemned the situation on the ground there. You had earlier today King Abdullah of Jordan saying that it would be a red line for Palestinians to be displaced into Jordan. He said that there would be no refugees in Egypt or Jordan. You've also heard the Egyptian president saying that this campaign that Israel has been waging against Gaza is collective punishment on civilians. So that is something that President Biden will have to navigate, as these Arab leaders will be key as this conflict continues. But there are also huge security concerns with President Biden traveling into an active war zone. That was seen just yesterday when Secretary of State Antony Blinken had to shelter as air sirens went off in Israel. But the president's team says that they acknowledge that this is a tense situation, that they've assessed the security situation. White House spokesperson John Kirby is saying that they've done their homework in assessing that it is safe for the president to travel to Israel at this time. Of course, this will be the second trip the president has made just this year to a war zone. Remember, he made that secret trip back earlier in the spring as he traveled to Ukraine, but later today he will be departing here to Israel, as he is trying to make this show of solidarity with Israel, but it also will mark a key test for President Biden, as his presence there could further tie him to the Israeli response in this war.
All right, Arlette, and that's certainly the case. And, you know, Phil, I mean, I know you've got so many sources you've been speaking to, but there is that risk. And there's also what Israel says, which is, at least they say, and I mean, you know, this is diplomacy, but they say that Biden coming doesn't impact their plans at all. You know, then there've been the widely expected discussion on the ground. Well, if Biden's coming, Netanyahu isn't going to go in then, because that would just make Biden look bad and tie him to this in an incredibly tight way. But what risks is Biden taking on, and what are you hearing about his goals?
You know, I think the risks are very real in terms of they want deliverables. If you're sending a president over, if the president's deciding to travel into a war zone on the front end of a war, obviously Kyiv and the secret trip there was a dramatic moment, but one that had come where hostilities were kind of in a static phase. This is a very, very different moment. And yet it's one that, you know, we were just talking to Kate Bedingfield, the president's former close advisor. She made clear, which is something I heard from other officials last night, they weren't actually surprised. One, face-to-face diplomacy is critical for this president. He talks about it often, so often that it's kind of just become a known truism that he wants to meet with people face-to-face. He feels like that's where he's most effective. But it also comes in the context of what we've seen play out over the course of the last several days. The Secretary of State traveling to Israel twice, in between traveling to several Arab states as well to meet with leaders, each time reporting back to the president, briefing him on where things stood. The president was having his own phone calls as well, and I think the critical piece of what you heard from Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, last night, after that 7.5-hour meeting between his team and their counterparts, their Israeli counterparts, where I'm told they were separating into rooms, working through shuffling paper, trying to figure out ways to hammer out some type of humanitarian answer here, is an understanding that while the U.S. is certainly completely supportive of Israel, while they have made clear they will stand side by side to them, give them whatever they need militarily to succeed in the offensive that's likely ahead, they also understand that the other players in the region, most specifically Egypt, obviously we talked a lot about the Rafah crossing, the president of Egypt, Sisi, will be in Amman, the second visit for President Biden. Also King Abdullah of Jordan, who Arlette was quoting there about the red line and their concerns that he's read. We're also meeting with the Palestinian Authority leader, Mahmoud Abbas, who the president has spoken to. They are critical players here as this moves forward. What people are saying publicly, U.S. officials aren't necessarily that surprised by it. It's what they do behind the scenes and whether or not a humanitarian corridor or aid agreement or safe zones can actually be locked in. That's critical not just for the ability for Israel to conduct the offensive ahead, but also the long game here for an operation that I think U.S. officials know is going to be both very painful and very lengthy.
Painful and lengthy, and the world just hopes does not escalate beyond that. But no matter what, painful and lengthy, and in part because of the hostage situation. Sarah Seidner is with me here, and I know, Sarah, we got this hostage video from Hamas with the mother of one of the hostages. Obviously, we're not airing it, but there's a lot that it tells, and not just about the situation and how they treated her or in the video, but about what they're trying to signal, that they are alive. You don't put that out unless you want to do a deal of some sort, it would seem. You actually were with the mother of this hostage this morning.
Yeah. What Hamas is doing is part of their propaganda war. That is always a part of any war, and what they are doing is basically signaling to the world that if you come in here, if you have a ground offensive, or if you decide to try and rescue these hostages, like, they're still alive. It's a pawn for them, I think, in this. If you look at it from 30,000 feet, for the family, it was the very first video out, first time anyone in the world has seen one of the hostages since Hamas took them
That's the first
on
time
Saturday.
that anyone even knew. I mean, at least that one of them at some
Was
point
still alive.
after the festival was alive, right? That's
And
the first
that's what her mother. So Mia Shem is a beautiful young lady who went to this rave party, was there to dance and enjoy herself, and she ended up in this horrible situation, that surprise attack on Friday. Her mother had been waiting all this time. She said, I knew she was alive. I just knew she was alive.
Yeah.
But she didn't have any confirmation. And then yesterday, the confirmation came. She got it along with the rest of the world. So we all saw at the same time that her daughter was alive. Her daughter looks, she has been injured. She has what is clearly a broken arm, probably from a bullet wound. She is all sewn up, not well. You can see bandages around her arm. Her mother is watching all this. I mean, you think about this from the perspective of a mother, a family member, and you imagine what that is like to see your child in pain, and also parroting what she believes parroting words that Hamas has asked her to say.
Saying that she's treated well.
That she's being treated well, right? She was being treated in the video, so that was also, again, a propaganda move on Hamas's part to say, look at our humanity, look, we're taking care of her, and yet they're the ones that injured her, and they're the ones that stole her.
Right, and that's, of course, why we're not airing. It was interesting, one of the hostage negotiators for SEAL Team 6 was saying to me that he also noticed that they had tried to do her hair and makeup.
Yes.
They tried to make her look better
than she
And
actually
he
was.
also was talking, and again, this is what, I mean, he's an expert at these things, but this is his interpretation, that he heard ventilator noises in the background, which would be consistent with being underground and consistent with what the IDF has told us, which is that they believe these hostages are being held underground in different locations.
Right, and because if they were to hold them all in one location and Israel had intelligence, they would go in. They know that the possibility is that they might actually get rescued, but if they do it all over, it is much more difficult. I do want to let you hear from Karen Shem, which is the mother of Mia Shem, who was taken by Hamas on Saturday. It was incredibly, as you might imagine, heart-wrenching to hear this mother's suffering. Listen.
I didn't know she's dead or alive until yesterday. All I knew is that she might be kidnapped. I'm begging the world to bring my baby back home. She only went to a party, to a festival party, to have some fun. And now she's in Gaza.
Hearing that is hard. I mean, excruciatingly hard. Yes. Being in the room, you could feel it. You could feel that sorrow, you could feel that hope, and you could feel that pain all at the same time. Their brothers were also there talking about her. And you see these pictures of this beautiful young woman. They probably picked her for a reason, to be the first video that was sent out. But we don't know when the video was taken. That's the other thing. We don't know how many days ago or if it was most recent. The likelihood is it wasn't today. That's the likelihood, or yesterday. So this mother is just begging people in the world to pray for her daughter and to get her daughter home. I can't tell you how impactful it was to be sitting in that room.
Oh, I can only imagine these these families. I mean, the pain is, to the world, your hostages, people feel sorry for them, they feel upset. But when you see that pain, it is a human pain.
Unimaginable.
Incredibly unimaginable human pain. Sarah, thank you very much. And just in, the IDF says shots have been fired along the security fence between Israel and Lebanon, right? This is, of course, the fear of that second front opening in the north. A short time ago, an anti-tank missile was fired toward an IDF post along the border with Lebanon. That's according to the IDF. Israel is now responding, so there's artillery fire in response to that. Let's go to Ben Wiedemann. He is there in southern Lebanon. And Ben, what are you learning and able to observe yourself?
Aaron, what we've been hearing is fairly distant thuds. We understand that most of the action is going on to the southwest of us. And this is really sort of in line with what we've seen over the last 4 days. Hezbollah will attack Israeli military positions, and the Israelis will respond. This sort of level of violence is at a level where perhaps you can say the water is being kept hot, but it's boiling over, because it would appear that at the moment neither Hezbollah nor Israel want to become involved in a full-scale war at the moment. However, we are hearing statements from Iranian leaders, Iran, of course, the main backer of Hezbollah, which would indicate that this holding of the line in terms of maintaining a certain level of violence, but not crossing what the Israelis have called the threshold of escalation. The supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, has said if atrocities in Gaza persist, Muslim and resistance forces could lose patience and no one can prevent their actions. Now, that's just one statement from a variety of Iranian officials, which would indicate that they're holding out the possibility that if Israel goes into Gaza, full-scale incursion with the bloodshed that will inevitably result, that perhaps Iran and its allies, such as Hezbollah, will not simply be sitting on the sidelines occasionally firing at the Israelis, but will go one step further. Aaron?
Ben Wiedemann, thank you very much there in southern Lebanon. Poppy.
Ron, thank you very much. We'll get back to you soon. And as President Biden prepares for this visit to Israel and then the broader region, the U.S. House of Representatives still doesn't have a speaker. A vote is expected today. We'll be joined next by Democratic Congressman Jim Himes. He's in studio.
We can't calculate our total taxes.
Do you realize how many different taxes we pay? Sales tax. Different POS systems in all 7 countries.
And online sales?
That's a whole other system. And different regulations. There's real estate credits, solar incentives.
And we have no way to integrate all that.
No. But BDO does.
People who know BDO.
This is American infrastructure, a prime target for cyber attacks. With the same AI-powered security that protects all of Google, also defends these services for everyone who lives here.
When did I call leaf filter? When I saw my gutters overflowing onto my porch.
Leaf filter is a permanent gutter solution, so you never have to worry about costly damage from clogged gutters again.
It's the easiest call you can make.
Call 833-LEAF-FILTER today or visit leaffilter.com.
When you're a small business owner, there's no such thing as 9 to 5. Days are longer, and business hours, well, they're anything but predictable, especially when you have clients like ours. When I considered payroll providers for my business, I looked for a solution that fit into my busy schedule. Short payroll makes running payroll fast and easy, so I can spend extra time with these guys.
Visit surepayroll.com/switch and get up to 6 months free. And find out what makes us different, because small business is our business.
I suffer with psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis. I was on a journey for a really long time to find some relief. Cosentyx works for me.
Cosentyx helps real people get real relief from the symptoms of psoriatic arthritis or psoriasis, serious allergic reactions, severe skin reactions that look like eczema, and an increased risk of infections, some fatal, have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen.
I move so much better because of Cosentyx.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
I used to leak urine when I coughed, laughed, or exercised. I couldn't even enjoy playing with my kids.
I leaked too. I just assumed it was normal.
Then we learned about Bulkamid, an FDA-approved non-drug solution for our condition.
It really works, and it lasts for years. It's been the best thing we've done for our families.
Visit findyourrelief.com to find an expert physician near you. Ask if Bulkamid is right for you and discuss potential risks. Results and experiences may vary. Move beyond the leaks.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
I have an annuity, but I need cash now.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
I've always been prone to hair thinning. I'm genetically predisposed.
I just gave birth. I was under a lot of stress.
I started taking Nutrafol.
We test our formulations with the highest rigor of clinical trials, and we're the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement.
I noticed it becoming
Stronger and thicker.
Nutrafol has taken me back to the hair I was meant to have.
I am back to me.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
Meet Milo. He's part border collie and part party animal. Meet the new Bissell Little Green Hydro Steam Pet. It's part steam-powered stain remover and part party animal patrol. Bissell, a new breed of clean.
I'm Pete Montine at Reagan National Airport. This is CNN.
Today, President Biden is preparing for a high-stakes trip to Israel. The president will land in Tel Aviv tomorrow morning, where he is expected to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Biden will then travel to Jordan. He will meet with King Abdullah of Jordan, then Egyptian President El-Sisi, and the Palestinian Authority's leader. So a significant trip. Also new this morning, Iran's supreme leader is weighing in on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and calling it, quote, ethnic cleansing. Also saying, quote, Muslims and resistance forces could lose patience. Israel has maintained it is making efforts to minimize civilian casualties by warning civilians in Gaza to move out of the north and into the south of Gaza. The total number of deaths reported this morning by the Palestinian Health Ministry there stands at nearly 2,800. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He is the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Good morning. Thank you for being here. What do you think President Biden needs to achieve on this trip, not only in Israel, but in the region, to make the risk worth it?
Well, I think what President Biden is doing is the same thing that 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, a couple of air wings, a couple of very clear statements by the Secretary of State is doing, which is telling Iran and Iran's client Hezbollah to stay out. Nothing says stay out quite as much as the president's presence on the ground. And, along with supporting the Israelis and, trying to identify the location of the hostages, that's probably their top priority right now. This is a bad situation to begin with. Were Hezbollah to come across the border, start launching missiles in force, that would be a massive escalation.
Specifically, let's say Egypt does not play ball and the Rafah crossing, nothing changes there. And we just heard Mark Regev, who's a senior advisor to Bibi Netanyahu, saying we may have to when Aaron asked about a ground invasion. And Israel's been clear, the president coming is welcome, but it's not going to change any of their plans on the ground. What if that happens while the president's there? Is it still worth it?
Well, I've been heartened by the fact that the Israeli leadership in the last couple of days in particular has come off of the understandable, emotional, enraged statements that they were making 10 days ago. And come to grapple with the reality that a ground incursion into Gaza would be a brutal thing for Israeli soldiers, as well as for obviously the Gazan civilian population. They've come off this notion of cutting off the water in the south. They are talking now with our people and with others about the humanitarian situation. Egypt needs to play ball. Now, Egypt, like Jordan and like Saudi Arabia, the leaders there worry about their streak. about popular uprisings. These are not necessarily popular leaders, particularly in Egypt, where they've got huge economic problems. So all of the leaders of those countries in particular will be saying things designed to keep their own domestic politics in a box, as it were.
As part of, you mentioned the aircraft carriers that have been sent, or the strike groups that have been sent as well, the U.S. military assets, the president now. Deterrence has been a critical piece of this. The president and his team repeatedly saying don't to Iran, to Hezbollah, to other actors in the region. Have you seen or have you heard of any intelligence related to spillover effect actually starting to take place?
Well, you know, as you've seen these skirmishes in the north, it's not like the north is quiet.
Right.
You know, there is a point. Hezbollah has their politics too. Iran, which likes to see itself as the purest, we all know this is baloney, but the purest and staunchest supporter of the Palestinians, they have their politics too. Which is why, apart from the moral reasons of making sure that Palestinian civilians are protected, which is why it's important that the images that come out of Gaza are not such that Hezbollah feels like they have no choice, Iran feels like they have no choice. And by the way, complicating matters is Hamas has every interest in getting Hezbollah and others into this. So it's going to be a very dicey couple of days.
Want your reaction to our Clarissa Ward, who's been doing remarkable reporting on the ground there, spoke with the son of a hostage, and she asked if he wants war. Here's what he said. Let's play it.
Nobody wants war, but I think people are willing to accept war because you're hurt and you want to stop the pain. So you see the demon in front of you and you want to vanquish it. I don't think it's realistic. Whatever we do to Gaza now, it would come back.
Israel has negotiated in the past for hostages, but right now the line out of Israel is Israel will not hold negotiations with any enemy that we have vowed to wipe from the face of the earth. Is that a mistake?
Well, I think the reality is, whether Israel's doing it directly or indirectly, the civilized world is going to do everything they can to get those hostages out. We've been talking about it on your show this morning. People, civilians held by terrorists is just about as excruciating a moment as you can imagine. I actually had a constituent who was part of the individuals released by Iran, and I worked with the family for years, and it's just the level of pain is incredible. I think the Israelis, and again, you can only imagine, we felt it on 9/11, you know, the rage out of the leadership 10 days ago was understandable. I think they've come to realize two things. One, they can no longer live with Hamas. They will ultimately, the world will hopefully ultimately participate in the elimination of Hamas as a political force. But I think the Israelis have come to realize that it doesn't necessarily need to happen in days or weeks, that this is a lengthy project, and that acting rashly could have bad implications for the hostages, for Hezbollah, and for other players. So I sense a sort of sitting back on the part of the Israelis and saying, hey, we need to do this, but let's do this driven by the best ideas rather than by rage and emotion.
There's been significant public support in the House, bipartisan, for Israel in the wake of the terror attack. But 15 of your colleagues, progressive members of your caucus, yesterday introduced a resolution calling for the Biden administration to seek an immediate cessation of hostilities and a ceasefire. What's your view of that?
The word ceasefire, and I understand the instinct, particularly when you're talking about as densely populated an area as Gaza. There's just no way to conduct war in a place like Gaza. We learned this in Iraq, in places like Fallujah, in a sanitary way. It just can't be done. So I understand the instinct, but calling for a ceasefire is like calling for the United States to stand down and do a ceasefire on September 12th, 2001, right? It's an ugly world out there, and you can't, after you have been brutalized, the way the Israelis have been brutalized, say, guys, take a deep breath and don't do anything about this. That's just not realistic, and it's not right.
What's not right? To make the call?
To say that you should not respond militarily to a terrorist attack that killed well in excess of 1,000 of your people. I understand the instinct, and look, people who remind us how horrible war is, I will never say that those people are absolutely wrong. We always need that voice. But when you have been brutalized the way we were on 9/11, or the way the Israelis were, you go to war.
Congressman Jim Himes, thank you for being here. Thousands of Israeli work permits are granted to Palestinians each year. Now, many of those same workers are trapped in refugee camps in the West Bank while their loved ones are facing a mounting humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Our colleague Jeremy Diamond spoke with some of those men as they made their plea for their loved ones.
I feel like I can't sleep. I'm super worried about them. If I was there, I would be the one taking them from one place to another to protect them.
ADT Self-Setup, featuring Google Nest products. Now you can easily install your system that's backed by ADT's 24/7 monitoring with no long-term contracts. So you have a home with no worries. Brought to you by ADT.
RSV can severely affect the lungs and lower airways.
But I'm protected with Arexvy.
Arexvy is a vaccine used to prevent lower respiratory disease from RSV in people 60 years and older. RSV can be serious for those over 60, including those with asthma, diabetes, COPD, and certain other conditions.
But I'm protected.
Arexvy is proven to be over 82% effective in preventing lower respiratory disease from RSV and over 94% effective in those with these health conditions. Arexvy does not protect everyone and is not for those with severe allergic reactions to its ingredients. Those with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most common side effects are injection site pain, fatigue, muscle pain, headache, and joint pain.
I chose Arexvy.
RSV, make it Arexvy.
This is spring semester at Fairfield Sassoon Unified. They switched to Google Tools for education because there's never been a reported ransomware attack on a Chromebook. Now they focus on learning, knowing that their data is secure.
Choosing a treatment for your chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can be overwhelming. So ask your doctor about Botox. Botox prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine before they even start. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine treatment. So far, more than 5 million Botox treatments have been given to over 850,000 chronic migraine patients.
Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
In a survey, 92% of current users said they wish they talked to their doctor and started Botox sooner. So ask your doctor if Botox is right for you. Learn how AbbVie could help you save on Botox.
Hockey season begin with celebration. Time to celebrate
In Vernon, we vibe on vitality, and we savor summer longer. Here we come alive on forest trails and play in colorful orchards that weave into rolling mountains. Raise your glass to the apples on trees and savor summer a little bit longer. Now's the time to travel to BC. Fall is on in Vernon.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Trust and Will has taken the process of creating your will and made it easy. Like while you're lounging on the couch, easy. All documents are state-specific, legally valid, and start at just $159. Find the plan that's right for you at trustandwill.com.
I'm Melanie Zanona in Washington, and this is CNN. All right, we have some new video just in that shows strikes near the Rafah crossing. That is the border between Gaza and Egypt. It is the same place where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are gathered, hoping to safely cross Gaza, out of Gaza into Egypt. It's also where Palestinian Americans and other dual passport holders all are massed, waiting. This comes as in the West Bank. We are learning more about desperate Palestinians who've been stranded at a refugee camp for days trying to get home. there have been scores of Palestinians who were working in Israel. Also, were actually in Israel. Many of them work here when Hamas attacked and the conflict began. And now they're actually stuck in the West Bank. They can't go back to Gaza to return to their homes, and they are fearing the worst for their families who they left behind, just going for a regular day at work. CNN's Jeremy Diamond joins us live from Jerusalem. And Jeremy, this is a crucial part of the story. I mean, even in the kibbutzim, which were hit in the attack, you would have had people from Gaza coming over to work in those homes and kibbutz. That's the way it works. You have every day people coming, Palestinians, into Israel. What more can you tell us?
Well, Aaron, before the war started, about 18,000 Gazans had permits to come and work in Israel, and UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, now estimates that more than 4,100 of them were in Israel when Hamas carried out its attack in Israel. Now, after having their permits revoked by Israel, they are now stranded in the West Bank. We met with a group of about 180 of them who are in the Daheisha refugee camp to hear their heartbreaking stories.
Yassine, he likes football, and he likes the phones.
Sitting in a refugee center in the West Bank, Ismail Abd el-Majid can't hold back his tears when speaking of his family. His wife and 5 children are in Gaza, which has faced relentless bombing over the last week.
They're my life. Of course, they are all my life.
Ismail should be there too. When war broke out, he was in Israel, with roughly 18,000 Gazans granted a permit to work there.
I always wanted this permit because the situation in Gaza is very dire. The financial situation, the debt, the economy is zero.
Now, Ismail just wants to go home.
In an instant, right now, I'll go back. This moment, I would go back.
When Hamas carried out its attack in southern Israel, hundreds of those Gazan workers suddenly found themselves stranded, far away from their families, as bombs began falling on the Gaza Strip. Now, several hundred of those workers are here in the Daheisha refugee camp, waiting to return home.
Well, these numbers are really hard to get a handle on, and there might be 15,000, 20,000 work permits that are issued on a daily basis. We don't know how many were working on that Saturday. It was Shabbat, so maybe the number was half. Maybe it's more than that, more than 10,000. But the Israelis have kind of gathered them up and brought them to the West Bank.
At least 180 are living, sleeping, and waiting here in the Daheisha Refugee Camp's event center, agonizingly powerless to help their families.
What do I feel? I feel like I can't sleep. I'm super worried about them. And all day I'm in contact with them. And until now I spoke to my boy. I told him to leave, to go to another area. Take your mother and your siblings and go to another area. If I was there, I would be the one taking them from one place to another to protect them.
Who's taking care of your family now?
Nobody. All of us, physically, we are here, but our minds are in Gaza.
During our interview, Marwan's family tries to call him twice. The call got disconnected, he says, discouraged. There's no reception.
And Aaron, what was most agonizing in listening to these men's stories was the sense of powerlessness. As the heads of their families, they would normally be the ones driving their family from place to place, trying to avoid the bombing that they are facing in Gaza. Instead, they are stuck, powerless to get back to their families, trying to connect with them on the phone. And as you can hear, they're trying to tell them where to go. But as we know, few places in Gaza right now are safe. Aaron?
So much pain and so much fear and so much uncertainty. Jeremy, thank you very much. It's such an important part of this story. Phil.
Thanks, Aaron. With virtually no updates on the condition of the hostages in Gaza, more and more families are growing restless. CNN's Clarissa Ward sat down with some of those families as they demand answers. Stay with us.
This is American infrastructure, a prime target for cyber attacks. But the same AI-powered security that protects all of Google also defends these services for everyone who lives here.
I have moderate to severe Crohn's disease. Now there's Skyrizi. Feel significant symptom relief with Skyrizi, including less abdominal pain and fewer bowel movements at 4 weeks. Skyrizi is the first and only IL-23 inhibitor for Crohn's that can deliver both clinical remission and endoscopic improvement. The majority of people on Skyrizi achieve long-lasting remission at 1 year.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to. Liver problems may occur in Crohn's disease.
Ask your gastroenterologist how you can take control of your Crohn's with Skyrizi. Learn how AbbVie could help you save.
Missing punches. Unnecessary. Check reversals. Unnecessary. Time sheet correction. Unnecessary. Unentered sick time. Unnecessary. Go! Go! Unnecessary.
When you can take this phone, you'll be ready.
Make the unnecessary unnecessary. Let your employees do their own payroll.
Every detail counts. That's why I live my life with Lexi B2 hearing aids powered by Bose. When I began experiencing hearing loss, I knew I needed the best of the best. Lexi B2 hearing aids powered by Bose are app-controlled and self-fitting, which means I can tune and customize them to my needs and preferences on the Lexi app and enjoy high-quality hearing. Take the lead and call or order online at lexihearing.com to receive your Lexi B2 hearing aids powered by Bose today.
The new CNN Prime Time is where the truth shines, taking you to the heart of the story
We start with breaking news for you this evening.
We are just about 3 miles from the Gaza border.
and breaking through the noise.
Interesting conversation about where we are in America right now.
The day's biggest stories.
What we have been seeing in Israel is unprecedented.
The night's most essential reporting.
It's not about what I believe, it's about whether there is evidence.
This is the new CNN Prime Time, weeknights starting at 7 on CNN.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
Why pay over $100 a month for cable when it's half the cost for Fubo TV? Get all the channels you want, with all the entertainment you love, for the price that cable can't beat. Try free at FuboTV.com.
What does human talent look like?
Just go on Fiverr, see for yourself.
Imagine working with them.
Yeah, imagine that.
When it's time for date night, he's always ready.
Rex MD. I can get generic Viagra online. Stay in the moment with Rex MD.
I'm Manuraj on Capitol Hill, and this is CNN.
A new video just in shows airstrikes near the Rafah crossing. We're told they hit about 1 kilometer from that crossing. It's about a half mile. There were 2 strikes about 15 minutes apart, according to our stringer. And a reminder, this is the same place where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are gathered, hoping to safely cross out of Gaza into Egypt. Our Clarissa Ward is in Ashkelon. Clarissa, you just heard booms in your area as well. What can you tell us?
That's right, Phil. No sign in sight of any end to the violence. As you mentioned, strikes in Gaza. Gazan authorities saying that more than 70 people have been killed, and those strikes took place in the south of Gaza, which is supposed to be the area that people are being evacuated to for their safety. Hundreds of thousands of them, 600,000 according to the UN, have moved into that southern part of the enclave. Then just a few minutes ago, we heard a barrage of missiles coming in here to Ashkelon. Take a listen.
And the Iron Dome, of course, intercepts the vast majority of those, although I will say this time we counted at least 2 direct impacts, one of them not far behind me. We've seen some fire engines arriving. There's no sense or reporting yet that anyone was injured, but clearly a sign that there is no abating to the constant escalation that has been continuing steadily for the last 10 days, Phil.
Of course, the IDF has said that there could be more of these hostage videos, right? That they released this one of a young woman named Mia. I know you've been speaking to and just spoke with some of the hostage families. What can you share?
So, Poppy, this is interesting because, you know, the IDF is now saying 199 hostages. Hamas is saying between 200 and 250. Last night, they released a statement saying that they would be willing potentially to release foreign nationals who are among those hostages when the right circumstances exist on the ground. But for the family members of all the Israeli hostages right now, there is real fear that the escalating violence, the relentless bombardment of Gaza is putting their families' lives in danger. Take a look.
For days, they have sat outside the military headquarters in Tel Aviv, holding vigil for their loved ones. Among many family members of those held in Gaza, there is anger at the Israeli government's handling of the crisis and growing cries to make a deal for the hostages' release. Shai and her family are looking for her sister, Lihi Albad, a 19-year-old soldier who disappeared at Nachal Oz kibbutz.
We don't know where she is, if she eats, sleep, where they keep her. We don't know anything.
So tell me, why are you here?
Because I want someone to look at me, look at all of us.
Earlier today, the government confirmed they believe another 50 hostages are being held in Gaza, bringing the total close to 200. Among them is 74-year-old Vivian Silver, a peace activist and Canadian citizen who lived in the Be'eri kibbutz. Be'eri was the site of some of the darkest bloodshed during the October 7th attack. Vivian's son, Yonatan, was on the phone with her throughout the morning as the horror unfolded.
I heard a lot of gunshots outside her window, and we decided to stop talking because she was hiding. But at some point she wrote me that they're inside the house.
Her house?
Yeah. And that was it. I wrote her, I'm with you. She said, I feel you, and that was the last message.
For 9 agonizing days, he has shuttled between optimism and despair as Israel's leaders steel its citizens for an invasion of Gaza.
When you look at more than 300,000 reservists being called up, huge amounts of weaponry and military personnel massing at the border, a lot of anticipation about a ground offensive, how does that make you feel?
It makes me anxious. I didn't want war before, and I don't want war now. I don't think we can cure dead babies with more dead babies.
Do you think in Israel that most people agree with you? Do you think people here want war?
Nobody wants war, but I think people are willing to accept war because you're hurt and you want to stop the pain. So you see there's a demon in front of you and you want to vanquish it. I don't think it's realistic. Whatever we do to Gaza now, it would come back.
A plea to break the endless cycle of violence and to prioritize rescuing the living over avenging the dead. But in this moment of raw anguish, it's the calls for invasion that are growing louder.
Now, we spoke to a former senior security official here in Israel, Poppy and Phil, who basically said that he does not believe this time that the Israeli government or the Israeli Defense Forces are interested in negotiating any kind of a deal or a prisoner swap with Hamas. He said that's the whole reason that Hamas's leadership even exists because most of them have been released in previous prisoner swaps. He said that he thinks the best chance of those hostages being released is through ground operations once an invasion begins. And of course, that will be a very frightening prospect for many of these families to hear. Poppy, Phil?
Yeah, no question about that. Clarissa Ward, great reporting. Thanks so much. Well, President Biden will leave today for an extraordinary wartime trip to Israel and Jordan. Admiral John Kirby joins us to discuss the president's decision. That's coming up next.
The new CNN prime time is where the truth shines, taking you to the heart of the story.
We start with breaking news for you this evening.
We are just about 3 miles from the Gaza border.
And breaking through the noise.
Interesting conversation about where we are in America right now.
The day's biggest stories.
What we have been seeing in Israel is unprecedented.
The night's most essential reporting.
It's not about what I believe, it's about whether there is evidence.
This is the new CNN prime time. Weeknights starting at 7 on CNN.
Some people go to the ends of the earth to find adventure. You just have to travel to the end of the road. Because here in Key West,
and now they need to start living it again from scratch. They need to be able to wake up in the morning, to go to work, to make sure that the other siblings are okay, to make sure that some of them were married. The widows need to be able to go to work, to be with their sons and daughters that are left at the house. It's so hard to think about what is going to be next while they are still, waiting for friends and more family to come and hug them. And it's like, there's nothing to say. I can only be there for them and hug them. And it doesn't end. In the last 10 days, I was in so many funerals. I met so many parents, so many siblings, people that lost their loved ones, and what can I say? It doesn't end. You know that after I think it was after the number 5, I think, funeral that I went to, I decided with myself that I'm stop counting how many funerals more I need to go. I said to myself that from now on, I will remember each one of the soldiers by the name and by the stories that their friends and family are telling me about them. Because there is so many funerals to go to, that if I need to remember all of them, the only way for me to remember it is if I will take from each one of them the first name and the story that their family told me about them. How they used to smile, how they used to laugh.
A girl in Israel who knows so many people who have died from the massacre attacks says, I got an idea that you should follow, yeah, get your lives back. There's so many people who have died, so many people's lives ruined who love them. Don't be lost in the dark shadow. Reclaim your life, make sure your daughters get married. Reclaim your life, take care of your other children. Reclaim your life, get your life back on track, don't become a living vegetable of depression and loss because the ones you love, because the one you love has been taken hostage or was killed terribly in other atrocities committed by Hamas, either burned alive, had decapitated, stabbed, or shot, or blown up.
Hello, everyone. President Biden getting ready to head off to Israel, and in doing so, giving an extraordinary show of support. Biden is expected to arrive in Israel tomorrow, and the move, of course, does not come without risk on multiple fronts. We are seeing new rocket attacks happening now on Israeli soil. The IDF also continuing to carry out strikes in Gaza, targeting the Hamas commanders who planned and pulled off that terror attack on Israel. And with it, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is only getting worse.